Hello, welcome to the first session of Beyond the Treatment Table for 2026. I'm excited to see some familiar faces from last year. I'm Stephanie Talabasa, the host for today's marketing discussion, and we have guest expert Karen Litzy. Karen, I'm going to let you do a quick intro for everybody.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Karen Litzy, and I'm the owner of Karen Litzy Physical Therapy, located in New York City. Also, the host of the podcast Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart, and on the medical review board of Prevention Magazine. That includes Prevention Magazine, Good Housekeeping, and a number of others.
So, for those of you that don't know, today's subtopic of the big overhead marketing focus for the month is how to get featured in the media. So from that introduction, you can tell we have the right person to give you all the insider tips. Let's get started with some quick intros in the chat. So I'm going to ask you to write your role in private practice, because I know not everyone that joins these sessions are owners. So what is your role in the business? Your main form of marketing for your practice, and then have you ever been featured in the media? So I'm going to put that prompt in the chat. And if anyone wants to come off mute and just say it out loud instead of typing, you're welcome to do that too. If not, I'm always happy to call on the familiar faces I know. Michelle, you want to jump in and share? So, your role in the business, main form of marketing, and then have you ever been featured?
Um, I do everything. I'm the owner, therapist, marketer, everything. Have I been featured? I did a podcast once. What was the other question? Sorry. I'm like, what did you say?
How do you get your patients? What is your main form of marketing?
I have one location inside of a fitness gym, and I would say that brings most. And now, because I've done it for years, get a lot of word of mouth marketing still from patients that I've already seen.
Great, great. So, I see lots of different varieties of marketing in here, community engagement. Um, Arlette has been in Wall Street Journal, big Instagram following. What else? We have Mariah, word of mouth and Google. Anyone else want to share? Any like cool features that you're super proud of? We got Andrew, word of mouth, a radio invite. That's cool. What
Mhm.
was that like?
It sounds a lot more glamorous than it is, but just basically, I'm trying to even remember what I'd done something for a patient that happened to be a radio station owner and said, we need to get this guy on the air. I don't think the person interviewing me was nearly as excited about it as the owner was. So I can't remember now what it was, but it was just something I'd done that they wanted to feature, and I don't know, nothing amazing.
What was it a fun experience for you? Were you nervous about it? Were you dreading it?
Well, I didn't dread it. I mean, obviously I was nervous, but I'm sure Karen is like, yeah, I do this all the time and I still hope that people come away with something from it. It's just that usual, I don't want to waste anyone's time here, but I do think I have some things to offer. And I think I probably did end up having a few people say, oh yeah, I heard you on the radio. So I mean, it's not like it was a complete waste of my time. I do a lot of things just because that's how I roll. It's not because I expect to get something out of it. And I've just learned, whether you call it karma or what you call it, I've just learned that if you're a good person, you do a good job, it always comes back around. So yeah, it was good.
I love that approach. Just do it for the act of doing it rather than trying to measure what am I going to get back from this. I'll share a little embarrassing. My first feature was over 10 years ago, and it was a quote on foam rolling your IT band. And I was so excited about it. I printed it out and I left it on the front desk of like, I wanted to show everyone my name was in the article. And now I look at it and I'm like, I wouldn't even tell someone to do that. Okay. Quick reminders, this discussion is every month on the fourth Thursday around the topic in focus. So if you want to look ahead, you can look at the PBS website and see what topics are coming up. February is HR, March is finance, then we have leadership. At the end of the call, there's going to be a survey that comes up, and I personally read every single response. So super helpful if you fill those out. And then also, if anyone has 2 minutes to stay on and just give me your verbal feedback, that would be really helpful too. So if you could hang out for 2 minutes at the end. Okay, Karen, what was your first media feature?
My first media feature was in Martha Stewart Living. And I had a patient who was a writer, freelance writer. One of the publications she wrote for was Martha Stewart Living. She was seeing me for back pain, and she was like, I've never heard of this before. I'm going to write an article about it in Martha Stewart. And so she did. And that was my first like feature in a mainstream publication. And same, I didn't print it out, but my parents printed it out and put it in a frame and gave it to me.
Same. Yeah. Same idea.
Yeah.
So worth celebrating.
Yeah.
How did it go from that to becoming part of your marketing strategy? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So after that feature, and this was, well over a decade ago, I joined the first ever group of the Media Corps for APTA. So this was well over a decade ago. So the APTA does have a dedicated media corps. So if you are not aware of that, they do. And I can only imagine they're always looking for people. So if you feel like, Andrew said, I think I've got a lot to say, you can always reach out and request to be part of the media corps. So they took us through, I don't know if they still do this, but they took us through like a 2-day media training, how to speak and work with different writers and publications. And then after that, I got a little bit from them. Like they would say, hey, the Washington Post wants to speak to someone. Can you speak to them? So they would kind of feed you some opportunities. And then I said to myself, I think I really like this. And I'm actually seeing patients like, hey, I saw you in Time Magazine, or a doctor is like, oh, I saw you quoted it was in the Washington Post, a doctor here in New York. We'd like to start referring patients to you. So it was this, people would see it and then contact me to refer patients or to come and see me, et cetera. So I saw like, oh, this is really making a bit of a difference. I need to get even better at this. So I then took a course through a woman named Selena Sue. She does not have this course anymore. It was called Impacting Millions. And it taught you basically how to be your own PR firm. So how to reach out, how to pitch, how to put together your big ideas in a way that the media, reporters, and journalists want. So after I took that course, I then felt more confident to put together my own pitch and reach out to journalists and writers. And I did. And then you also get better at learning how to speak to a journalist and knowing things to say. Like if you do speak to a journalist, hey, would you mind sending it? Can you send me this before it goes to print? And most will say, yeah, sure, just so you can have sort of a final edit. And I've done that at times, been like, oh, no, I didn't mean it. In the way that you took it was not the way I meant it. And then they'll change it because the thing to remember is journalists, writers, publications, they want to put out good information and they're not the experts. We are the experts. So being able to say like, hey, can you send me it before it goes to publication? And for the most part, they'll do it. But I also learned how to speak with journalists, how to have everything ready. So you might be on a phone interview, it might be 5 minutes, but then you want to follow up with an email with all of your references, because they'll put those references into their articles. They're just not going to put something up that's like you just made up out of thin air. So the preparation before you speak to them or before you send your pitch is really the most important part. And then the more you do it, just like with our patients, right? We teach them an exercise. Sorry, it's going to be loud here for a second. I'm in New York City. The more you practice, the more you speak with the journalist, the better at it you become.
Can you talk a little bit about what would be different in speaking to a journalist versus, let's say you were writing a blog for your website? How might you prepare that information differently?
Right. Well, I think it's also important to understand, and I'm glad you brought up like a blog, because there's a difference between, you may hear the term earned media, paid media, and owned media. Earned media is you've earned a spot in a publication because you are an expert. It's completely free, right? So if you don't have a big budget for marketing, this is like a lot of bang for your buck because the only buck is your time, right? So the earned media can be really impactful to potential patients because they're seeing, oh, they reached this, they talked to this person because they're an expert. So it gives you that social proof and credibility. Owned media would be your blog, right? So anyone can have owned. So that means you own that blog. It sits on your website, which you run. So you may have patients look at that blog and say, "Oh, that makes sense." But everybody can have a blog. But where that owned media comes in is if you're consistent with it, obviously it bumps you up in Google review and Google searches, etc. So there's a place for owned media, earned media, and then paid media is exactly what you think it is. You're buying Google ads or you're buying Facebook ads. And maybe there's a place for that as well. It just depends on who your ideal patients are and who you're trying to reach. But when it comes to, if we look at like the funnel of decision making, you've got awareness on the top. So a Google ad or a Facebook ad might be able to reach a lot of people from an awareness, doesn't necessarily help when it comes down to the trust and the decision making. But if you're constantly featured, even if it's in your local newspaper, you write an article for your local newspaper once a month, that gives you a little more credibility. So people are more likely to trust you if they're seeing you in earned media. Because we all know, like when you go on Google search, like if you Google something and it says paid searches first, like how many of you are like, because it's paid, right? So you're like, no, I don't want the paid. I want to see who's showing up in the Google searches and why. So those are just some things to think about when you're looking at that funnel of your marketing decision making. Do you just want to get a lot of eyeballs? And then maybe a lot of those eyeballs turn into getting onto your email list or something like that. And then you can send them your blogs, or when you are featured in mainstream media, you can send them those featured articles to help them make that decision. Does that make sense? So there's place for all three of those things. It depends on how much time you want to spend and what your budget is, quite frankly. So I like earned media because it's free. And as you keep showing up, so the way that I got on the prevention medical review board is because I just kept showing up. I kept pitching. Then finally they're like, well, she knows what she's talking about. And then they asked me to be on their medical review board. They're all physicians and the only physical therapist on the board. And I get a lot from them as well. And it was the same thing. A doctor here in New York City, his front desk contacted me and said, did you know you're in Prevention Magazine? And I was like, yeah. And they said, great, because we have lots of patients to refer to you. And they have referred a substantial amount of revenue. And that was all free marketing, earned media.
It's so interesting to think about. I think we always think about marketing to our patients, and it's interesting the side effect of doctors seeing that and it establishing some credibility.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take you back one step and see if anyone has any questions. By the way, I love that you talk with your hands. Also, I describe it like this, and I'm like, what you're asking about is here, but we focus here. Anyone have questions about that funnel or the different purposes of earned, paid, owned? There's got to be some, because I know people are writing blogs. I know you're writing newsletters. Like, how much of each should we be doing?
And I see a lot of people shaking their heads there. I think, like I said, I think there's a place for all of it. And in my mind, I think you do all of it. Well, maybe not the paid if you don't have the budget for it, but let's say you want to figure out, you're getting owned media or earned media. So if you do that for a couple of months, then you can kind of A/B test and see how many people am I getting from my blog or from a Google search, or how many people are saying, I saw you in XYZ. Right now, the other thing I will say is the more publications you're in, that also bumps you up in a Google search. So from that earned media can then contribute to your Google search.
Okay, so Britt wants to know the first step in creating your media pitch.
Great
And
question.
then Asha, I'll pull you up.
So the first step is narrowing down what your expert topics are, right? So it takes a little bit of introspection. So what are you really passionate about? What do you see the most, right? If you're in pelvic health, I mean, bonanza, right? Pelvic health is huge across all media. If you're working with women between the ages of 35 and 55, amazing. Perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, that sort of group of ladies is having a real moment right now. You can probably pitch to any media outlet and they will want to do something around the musculoskeletal implications of menopause, the musculoskeletal system of syndrome of menopause, right? If you work in orthopedics, right? If you're an ACL expert, you can talk about athlete who just tore their ACL, reach out, right? But the first thing is narrow down your expert topics. Once you have your expert topics narrowed down, then and this is the background work, by the way, that does take some time. You want to look at some of these mainstream publications, or if you're in, like, I'm in New York City, so it's not like I'm gonna be like, I'm going to write a column for the New York Times every week. Like, probably not going to happen. But I'm on the Upper West Side, so there's a paper called the West Side Rag that is read by most people on the Upper West Side. So maybe I can reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I do. Love to write a column. So if you're in a smaller market, you can reach out to your very local publications first. Think of it as like a ladder system. So your sort of lower rungs of the ladder are going to be your immediate local newspapers, local podcasts, things like that. And then once you kind of figure out who those people are, then you go in to be like, I've always wanted to be in Prevention Magazine, or I've always wanted to be, someone said they're AARP senior ambassador, Arlette. So I've always wanted to be in AARP magazine. So then you just make yourself a little list, a spreadsheet of what are your publications that you want to be in. Great. Now, you've got your expert topic. And with that expert topic, you want to have just some bullet points underneath. You don't have to have a fully formed idea. You find the publications that you feel you really want to get into. Then the hard part is like, well, who writes for these how am I supposed to know who writes for these publications? Like, what? That's crazy. So one of the easiest ways you can do that is just to go to the publication's website and scroll through some of the articles. Every article has a byline and it has the name of the writer or journalist that wrote that article. So if you go into Prevention Magazine, I'm just using that as an example, or maybe, I don't know, Oprah Magazine. Of course, most of these are online. The Washington Post, Time Magazine. Find out who are the health and wellness writers. And then when you find out the name, you write it into your spreadsheet. I guarantee you almost every one of those writers has their own website or their own LinkedIn. And if you go to these writers' websites, their contact page always says, if you have a story, please contact me. If you, for pitches, please contact me. So they are not like in an ivory tower, because most of these publications need 365 days of content. So how are they going to get that content without the experts that we are? So in how to start, that's definitely the way you want to start. Narrow down your topics, have some bullet points under that topic. And maybe, like I said, maybe your main topic is like ACL injuries. Well, you can narrow that down. It could be ACL injuries in young girls. It could be recovery from, if it's low back pain. There's not a publication in this world that doesn't want something about low back pain because it's so insidious, right? How can physical therapy help? This is what this means. You know, you can, so there's tons of ways that you can think of your topic. The other thing you can do is you can set a Google alert for a specific topic. So I treat a lot of chronic pain patients. I have a Google alert set for every day for chronic pain. So it sends me recent articles on chronic pain, and I can read through them and be like, I don't know about that. Like, that doesn't make sense. And then you can reach out to that writer and say, hey, I read this article, but I have some additional things that maybe weren't part of that original article. I have a follow-up for you. And like I said, 365 days a year, they need content. So most of these writers are more than welcome to take your pitch. Now, you may send out 20 pitches and maybe get one or two back. Great. You're featured. You're going to be in an article. And then once you make that connection, that writer will keep coming back to you, which is what happened to me. So that writer, there was a writer for prevention who kept coming back to me to the point where then I got on the advisory board. But it's all about making yourself accessible and creating a relationship. You know, it's not transactional. You're creating a relationship. You want to be this person's go-to source for all things health and wellness. Because, you know, we read through these things and you're like, why are they always interviewing, and nothing against personal trainers or yoga or something like that, but why are they always quoting a personal trainer? Like, why aren't they quoting more physical therapists? Like, you know, raise your hand how many times you've thought that. So the reason they're not is because perhaps the personal trainer was more top of mind. Maybe they're reaching out. Maybe it's the writer's personal trainer. You know, you don't know the backstory. But if you keep putting yourself out there, you'll keep getting asked back. And if we're like, I remember years ago, I was in an article about pillows, and it was in Wirecutter, which is the New York Times. All of a sudden, I was like getting calls from all these different publications to talk about pillows. I was just got a Google alert about myself. I was just quoted in an article for mattress toppers. I did that mattress topper interview a year and a half ago. So they recycle.
I think that point is really big because what you said about one or two out of 20 pitches, like, amazing. I think people might, at least people that I've talked to about this topic, think one or two, oh, I didn't get picked, nothing came out of it, and then they stop. Before we go on that tangent, I want to make sure, Natasha, you can come off mute, ask your question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I just had a question about you were talking about blogs, your own stuff. Thoughts on, like, should the topic just kind of be similar to what you would pitch to a publication, or would it just be like, should be a mix of like personal and educational, or should it be like, it could just be like whatever the topic was, like how to prevent low back pain in the winter, and you're just writing basically like an article, but it's on your own stuff. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Should it be used to get people to, like not contact you, obviously, but like sales or marketing, or should it just be information?
All the above.
Okay.
I mean, I personally am a big fan of adding in a little personal story because again, we're talking about relationships and connection. So if you can put in some of your own personal story into your blog that you're writing on that you own, your owned blog, I think it will allow people to make that connection with you and is more likely to result in them reaching out to you because they think they know you. Right? Like I wrote a couple of blogs a while ago about my experience with chronic pain. It was most like when I look at the metrics, by far the most successful blog, and is a reason why people come to see me who have chronic pain because they're like, oh, you get it. You understand what I'm going through. So you've made a connection without even having to speak with them. And your blog can also be timely. So you can tie your blog, you can hyperlink within your blog an article from the New York Times or the Washington Post if there was like a big story, like when these athletes get injured, an Achilles tendon rupture, this, that, they call it sort of piggybacking. So you're piggybacking on an existing story about like a big name. And if you link to that article, they know you've linked to it. So it pings back to them. And so then if you wanted to, I don't know, pitch, you could say, oh, I really love this article. Here's the blog post I wrote about it, blah, blah, blah. So I think to answer your question, it's all of the above. I think you want people clicking on your site. You want people moving around your site. You want people reaching you. You want to be personal. You can also piggyback and be timely. I know some people who will plan out their blogs in January. Maybe they do one a month. So all 12 of them are written in the month of January, which is great. But it's also good with something timely happens to make sure you can quickly adjust to that. Like if legislation passes, that might be helpful to physical therapy, right? You want to be able to kind of write a blog to talk about that. Because I think the important part that I also want to say is that whether you have owned media, we'll say owned and earned media, not only should it help your standing within your community, but we really want it to raise the whole level of physical therapy. The more physical therapists that are thought of as experts, we're elevating the whole profession outside of you as an individual, like owner or private practice owner or marketing expert within your private practice. So yes, you're elevating yourself, but what's the one thing nobody knows what we do? How come nobody knows what physical therapists do? So annoying. And it's like, yes, it is annoying. But if everyone has some form of whether it's earned or owned, I think it helps the whole profession sort of rise up and be top of mind so that when a writer is looking for someone to be quoted in an article, they're not going to go to the trainer. They're going to go to the physical therapist. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
I love that. If you don't like what you see online, if you don't like what you hear online, make your voice louder. There's a lot of people on this call. I think over 70 people signed up to learn about this. So hopefully that's 70 new PTs that are pitching the media. And coming back to Ellie's question, I think potentially building your portfolio with some of the smaller local papers, does that have anything to, so this is kind of a question and I formed it as a statement, but pitching the local papers and getting some reps under your belt, does that help when you go out to a bigger source, or can you just go right for the big source?
I mean, of course, it's always helpful to have a couple of to have some experience in your chamber, so to speak. But Does it necessarily mean a automatic yes when you're reaching out to a larger publication? No, but it is helpful. And also, do you have to write these articles or just let them interview us and they write it mostly? So I think if you're going to reach out to like a more local paper and say, I want to write a column once a month, obviously you're writing that column. For these larger publications, it's the writer is writing it. They will interview you and you will be quoted in it. That has been my experience. Usually like a larger, like the Washington Post isn't going to be like, sure, have a byline. Like the odds of that are pretty slim. So you may reach out to a writer, you have an idea, that writer is going to put that idea together and interview you along with other professionals within an article. But yeah, I mean, the other thing that I always recommend people do is to have on the ready a media bio. So on your website, you might have your big bio where it's like Stephanie, it might be like, I have a practice in Brooklyn and Lower Manhattan, and I do this. That's right, Steph? And I do this and I do that, spoken and from like the first person because you're trying to be personable. I graduated from here. With a media bio, you're going to be third person. So it's, Karen Litzy, owner of Karen Litzy Physical Therapy in New York City. She has worked with, like, numbers are big. So she's worked with thousands of patients experiencing XYZ, or if you've worked with like professional athletes, or I worked in like for the Lion King and things like that. So stuff that most people would know, right? So that's kind of part of your bio. If you went to a university that most people would know, say you graduated from and people say I graduated from the old trope, Harvard. Like you always know when someone went to Harvard because they never stopped talking about how they went to Harvard. So, if you went to like a really big like university that everyone would know, you can put that in, but you don't have to. And then if you have been featured in other publications, that's where you want to put that. You don't have to link to them, but you can say like, hey, I've been featured I have a featured column in this newspaper in your town, or I've been featured in whatever other magazine. Because that's, again, social proof to get more social proof, which I know is annoying. It's like you need the traction to get the traction, if that makes sense. But to have that very small media bio, it's usually 250 words, 500, we'll say less than 500 words. You can take your existing bio, put it into like Claude or ChatGPT and ask them to write a media bio for you with X amount of words, and they'll shrink it down. But you just want to think about like, what are it's your highlight reel. What are the highlights of your business, of your career? Have you won any awards? Are you an award-winning business? Are you an award-winning physical therapist? Those kinds of things. Because when you send that, so you have your pitch, right? Sincerely, Karen, P.S., please see my media bio below, and just copy and paste your media bio so they can quickly read through it. Because when you're doing these pitches, short and sweet, topic, bullet points, I can be reached at, thank you, see my media bio below. But yeah, now you have like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI platform you're using to help you write that. When I wrote mine, there was no AI. But it's just a nice way to encapsulate all your highlight reel. So I remember working through this with a PT here in New York, and she was like, oh, I work with performers. I was like, which performers? She's like, oh, I'm the physical therapist for Hamilton. I'm like, that should be in your media bio. Like these are really important things, so that when a journalist looks to be like, they're the PT for Hamilton, well, I'm going to talk to them. Or if in your local community, if you're the PT for a local school, whether it be high school or college or something like that. Like these are big deals. These are things journalists would know. So I think in physical therapy, we tend to write things for each other that we all know what we're talking about. And we're not real good at bragging about ourselves. But in that media bio, you're writing it for someone else and you want to be larger than life. So it's hard.
That's what I was thinking too, is that the brag is really tough when it's about yourself. And I think being humble in this situation is not the goal.
No, it's not the goal. You want to be like, I did all this amazing stuff, and this is why you want me to be part of your article.
Talking about coming back to the backlinks and linking out, I think SEO becomes kind of a confusing topic, and I've talked to people who pay someone for SEO, and they are getting backlinks in maybe not an interview format where it's more like the article is just linking back to any physical therapist. Can you talk a little bit about that strategy versus the earned media, and does that actually help with SEO?
Well, I will preface, I am no SEO expert. Um, I mean, I guess we can hypothesize it should help. If what I will say, if you are ever, or not if, when you are in a publication, you always ask them to link to your website. Like request it, make sure they are not, you get confirmation on that, you send them the link. And maybe you want to, and you send them the link. Maybe it's to your site, maybe it's to your blog, maybe it's to your social media, wherever you want your that audience to go to. Because then that if they ping you, I do believe that helps bring up your SEO factor, especially if it's in like a large worldwide mainstream media publication. That's I don't know a lot. Does anyone else?
I asked because this is a topic that I love, and I do know
Yeah.
with SEO, if the website is more visited, if it's something like your Chamber of Commerce, or like you said, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, those have very robust audiences. So that a backlink on a publication like that versus, your local neighborhood paper is going to do different things for your website. And I think sometimes those paid backlinks, when you pay for someone to just hyperlink your website everywhere, they're not actually articles that people are reading. So it's not actually boosting your SEO. So I just wanted to bring that up in case anyone leaves here and they're like, I'm going to take a shortcut and I'm going to pay someone $20 per link. You actually have to do the interview and be quoted for it to help.
Good to know.
Any questions on how it relates to brand authority, positioning yourself as the expert? Does that make anyone feel uncomfortable calling themselves the expert?
I hope not.
Denise, was that a question, or gonna yell out a name?
No, sorry.
That's okay. Nidia, do you want to say anything? You've been very actively nodding along. You have anything?
Finding my wow, this is such great content. I just ran into this on Impact this morning and was like, wait a minute, I got to get in on this. No, calling ourselves an expert, the longer we've been doing this, you just got to feel it in your bones. I mean, this is what we do. I love the information you're giving about find your niche. What is it that we do? And then go with it. I've had a little bit of experience writing in there, but what you're sharing with us is golden because it's reminding me, get back out there. And you're right. I agree. You read something and you go, oh my gosh, why is a physical therapist not doing this? And so you said there's how many people signed up? 75? we need to be out there. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
And if I could say something just to kind of reiterate on this kind of earned media and how it might grow your practice, whether you're early stage, you're mid stage, you're incredibly established. So for those early owners, it gives you visibility, as I said before, without huge budgets, right? So when you first starting out, like maybe you don't, I think, what is the average? I think it's like might be 3% or 5%, 3% of your of physical therapy practices budgets go to marketing, somewhere between 3 and 5%. Feel free to correct me on that, but I think that might be right from the latest IBIS World Report, or the latest IBIS World Report I read, which was last year. And I should preface the IBIS, I don't know if it's IBIS or EBIS, IBIS. Have you heard, has anyone heard of that before? Oh, sorry. Apparently my thing's on. So the IBIS World Report is a large report that you can get for the United States and you can get for your specific state. It is about $1,000 for this report. But if you belong to your local library, you can get it for free. So I belong to the New York Public Library. You make an appointment with the librarian and you say, I would like you to pull the IBIS World Report on physical therapy for the country and for my state, and they will send it to you for free. So do not get caught in paying $1,000. Don't do it. Go to your library, your local library. If you obviously you need a library card, but in that, it gives you, in that report, it kind of gives you the status of physical therapy right now. I think they do it maybe once a year, maybe twice a year. And in that, you can look and see, like, what is the average spend on marketing? I think it's like 3 to 5%. But when you're starting up, you don't have 3 to 5%, right? So the earned media for early owners, visibility without huge budgets, positioning yourself as the expert in your niche, and it gives you a little local trust, local referrals, right? Because when you're first starting out, maybe you want to focus more local. As you're scaling your business, whatever that scaling looks like, scaling doesn't have to mean hiring more people, opening a bunch of locations. Scaling could be you're more comfortable in your business, it's humming along well. So how this earned media can benefit you when you're in this stage is you're differentiating yourself with your fellow business owners in your area. You get more trust from your patients, a higher value of trust. And then you get the business and physician partnerships because they're seeing you, whether it's local or national. And then when you're established, it can just help to elevate your brand even more. It may help you recruit good candidates to work for you because they're like, why wouldn't I want to work for the person who's always in the media? And you get more influence beyond your clinic. So now you have profession-wide influence, right? It may help you get speaking gigs, maybe speaking gigs outside of the physical therapy world, right? So it's really at different stages, you can look at it as giving you different ways to grow your practice for free. I just want to put that out there for free.
I like that stamp. I put
Period.
Karen's article in Impact in the chat, and I took a quote from there. The most skilled clinician doesn't always win. The best marketed clinician does.
We know this. That is not news. And a couple of weeks ago, I did a thing where we looked at like what physical therapy for 2026 might look like. And one of the things that kept coming up as I was researching healthcare physical therapy is that instead of outcomes based, like your outcomes being the reason why you succeed, trust is the new currency. because we're living in a trust economy, right? Especially at times where trust is in short supply. It's hard to trust what you see, it's hard to trust what you hear. So if you can create trust amongst your community, that's going to mean more perhaps than you saying, you know, everybody who comes to us for back pain is magically cured in 2 visits, which I don't know, maybe it is, but where I think the trust is going to mean more to your potential patients than outcomes. And this helps to build up that trust.
Going to ask another question about the actual technical piece so that when we leave, everyone has something to do immediately. So you talked about the kind of back end research route, go to your favorite publication, look for the health and wellness author, and then send them your pitch. What do you think about sites like Help a Reporter Out,
Great.
Quoted? Should we sign up for those?
Great. Yeah, Harrow's great. I got a lot of things from Harrow. Harrow is Help a Reporter Out. I've gotten lots of publications from Harrow. Thanks for remembering about that. I forgot. Yeah, they're great because again, they're literally putting out what they need. All you have to do is click and respond. Voila. You don't even have to come up with the topic. They've already come up with the topic for you. And there's another one. I'll find it and maybe we can send it out in an email to everyone. There's another one. I think it's like Authority Magazine or something like that, but I'll send it out. They do more like long form. So it's like your picture, it's like an article dedicated to you. But I'll try and find that.
I know that one. I know Harrow and Quoted. Those I've pitched on before. And that's how I know you need so many reps in order to get a response.
Yes.
And it's a little defeating in the beginning because you're just sending it out there and you're sending out your best work and you just don't hear anything.
Right. Let me see. This might be it. I think I found it. So obviously this changes, certainly changes month to month and week to week, but I'm just going to put this down in the chat. Sorry, here it is. So they have like, this is long form, interviews. And if you click on it, you'll see they have like 665 ongoing topics. Now it ranges from pop culture to business to health and wellness. Since this is the private practice section, don't sleep on the business interviews. You've got a lot to say about business as well. So don't just go straight to the wellness. Look at some of those business interviews that they're looking for as well. So you can reach out to, and this does change.
Since you mentioned business, I dropped the Impact Writer form in there. So if anyone wants to write for Impact Magazine, you can sign up there, write an article for the next. What about podcasts? Do you think that there's one is better than the other, getting featured on a podcast versus getting quoted in a written article?
I think it depends where your ideal audience is located, right? Now, again, both are great because with a podcast, to your point of SEO, they're going to ping back your site and everything else. I know that there are a lot of parts of the country where they do have some like local podcasts, like my friend Stephanie Wyrock, she's in Billings, Montana, smaller market, but they have some local podcasts that she's been on that have helped her business grow because people listen to these local podcasts. And then same thing with podcasts, like, we're not going to be like, oh, I know, I want to be on Good Hang with Amy Poehler. Like, probably not going to happen, would be the most incredible thing if it did happen. And maybe that's like the big audacious goal. But what you can do is go to Spotify. You can go to, there's another one called Good Pods, Pod SEO. They will rank like all the health and wellness podcasts, physical therapy podcasts. So again, it's a little more work for you on the back end, but you can put a list of all the podcasts that maybe you'd be a good fit on. And by the way, maybe you'd be a good fit on a business podcast, maybe a good fit on a parenting podcast if you're a mom. Maybe like it doesn't just have to be about physical therapy. Maybe it'd be a good fit on a pain related podcast, on a sports related podcast. So don't like pigeonhole into just physical therapy, wellness, etc. Like broaden it out. Maybe it's a physician led podcast and you're like, I've got a great idea. So yeah. And just the same way you would pitch to a reporter or a journalist, you would pitch to a podcast. So for my podcast, I probably get, and Michael's been on it. I see him there. I probably get maybe 15 to 20 pitches a week. And I will tell you when I open it up, if it's like this long, I just don't even look at it. I'm like, I can't. If they don't put a link to a website or who they are, I don't even look at it anymore. Cause it's just, like, I don't have an assistant, like it's too much time. And also like, if you're not putting the link in, why do I have to go searching for you? So when it's a good reminder when you're reaching out to reporters and journalists and podcast hosts, like make their life easier. If you've got like a link to an article that you wrote, or if you've got a link to a recent study that just came out, link the study, because if it's not there, I guarantee you that journalists will just delete it. So make their life easier. And pitching, like if you're pitching to a physical therapy related podcast, jargon it up, right? Use PT jargon, totally fine. When you're reaching out to a journalist, you want to simplify the language. That doesn't mean dumb it down. It just means simplify it so that it's mostly jargon free.
Super helpful. I'm going to call up last questions. I'm going to pick on the people who have their cameras on. Amanda, do you want to jump in, share anything?
This is my first time attending any of these, so I'm just sucking up all the information that I can and writing everything down. I have already Googled the funnel just to see what that was about, which I found one that was talked about a marketing funnel, but then became a customer service funnel in the opposite direction, which was cool because I liked your comment about trust being the currency, because I mean, word of mouth is everything, and keeping a positive view in the environment, I mean, in your community is, I mean, I love and always want everybody to say, go there because I went there, my friend went there, I know these people, they're great people, So, I mean, I think that reputation is everything. So, I appreciate all of your stuff. It's been great.
Good. And I just put in and where I got a lot of that funnel thing was from Harvard Business School online. So I just linked the article in the chat.
Thank you. If you're linking information, is it okay if it's in the signature, or do we want to link it in the body as well?
Oh, link it in the body as well.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, you don't want them to have to go down and be like, wait, where's their LinkedIn? Oh, here it is. No, link it in the, like at the end of your pitch, you should be like, thank you so much for XYZ. You can reach me you could put your phone number, you could say at this email, here's my LinkedIn. But and one thing I forgot to mention about the beginning of that pitch is you want to create some familiarity. So it might be, hey, I've read like your last couple of articles in Prevention Magazine, or I saw you wrote an article about low back pain. I really loved it. Here's some things that, that I was thinking I can contribute to your next article on low back pain. So you want to create some familiarity. So you don't want to go in and be like, this is my pitch. Like if you were meeting someone in person, you wouldn't sit down with them and be like, this is my pitch to you. Right. So the same goes for like emailing someone. You want to be like, hey, I noticed that you write for this publication, that publication, because you want to create some sort of familiarity. Or maybe you met them, in person and you're doing a follow-up. Or maybe you know someone that knows them, even better. But create familiarity first.
Quick compliment up front goes a long way with getting someone's attention.
Yes.
The other question was from a new marketing director, Gabriella. Any tips for her starting off in her marketing career?
Oh, sorry. I was just say that again. Sorry. I have the
You have the chat open.
the chat open. And I was
Uh,
like, the orange kitty. I'm like, where is he? I'm like, oh, yeah, he's back
you can see
there.
him in the background. You're so small on my screen. Gabriella is a new marketing director, so she wants to know, do you have any general advice for someone starting their marketing career?
Oh gosh. A marketing director at like a physical therapy clinic.
I believe so.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I mean, I would get to know every single person that works at that clinic. Understand, like do little mini interviews with every single person so that you know what that person's about. You get a good vibe of the clinic, because it's hard to market something if you really don't know the people and the culture and really connect their vision and mission. So the first thing I would do, and this is what a lot of large marketing and branding companies do, is they will sit and have interviews with every single person that works. If it's a small company, within that company, and maybe that takes a couple of weeks. But if you don't know the company, how can you market and brand them? So that would be the first thing I would do.
And I think that's great advice for all the owners here too, of
Yeah.
having to set that up with the person who is the voice of the brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Michael had a podcast question. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for being late on the Zoom. I apologize. I always like to hear the words you say. But my question is, it seems like once every other week I get some type of email coming across, hey, we'd like for you to be a guest on our podcast. And these are podcasts I've never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And I typically haven't been responding just because I don't know whether it's time or whatnot, or I don't know if these are valid. What's the best way? I'm sure you get the same, but what's the best way to see if these are valid and whether it's worth our time or not to respond?
Yeah. I mean, if they have a website, obviously go to their website, see what they're about. And again, I think it's Good Pods. Let me double check on that. You can go to Good Pods. And they'll give, it is Good Pods. They'll give you can just put in the name of the podcast, and I put it in the chat there, and they'll tell you like what it's about, maybe where they rank. And there's another one, I think it's like something with notes in it. Like it's not podcast notes because that's way too generalized. But there is another site that will, when you go on it, they'll say like this podcast is in like the 0.1% of all podcasts as far as rankings are concerned. I just, for the life of me, cannot remember what that website is right now. But if I do remember, then I will definitely
You can get it in the summary email.
yeah, I'll definitely send that along. I'm
Big
looking
thing
for
is
it
to
now
do
and can't find it.
on it, because there's a lot of kind of email scams now. Well, they'll ask you to be a guest,
Yeah.
and then you get in and it's like a Google Meet, and the podcast isn't going anywhere, and they kind of use it as like a sales call, and at the end they pitch you on a product or they
Yeah.
pitch you on a service, and then you never see that podcast go anywhere.
I think that's why I've been kind of leery.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And again, what I would also, because I am like, definitely averse of clicking on any links in any email from any person that I do not know.
Yeah.
That's the other one. It's called Listen Notes. That's a really reliable one when it comes to podcasts. I wouldn't click on anything that they've linked to, just Google search their podcast. I don't know about you, but I am very averse to clicking on anything.
I am
So-
with you. So the podcast survey, the session survey just popped up. If anyone has 2 minutes, please stay and give me your feedback. Our next session is February 26th. That is an HR discussion with Tara Jo Mantle and Sharon Dunn. And we are going to get into the details of the workforce data reports. And we're also going to talk about our profession being recategorized. So if you want to hear what they have to say on that, if you have any thoughts, if you want to talk about the debt to income ratio and hiring, that one's going to be really, really big. I had my interviews with them last week, and it's a lot of information. We're ready. And then if you have any questions or follow-up, you can always email them to PPS. I'm going to put that email in the chat. And I hope to see all of you next month. Thank you so much, Karen. I
Thank
think
you. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm going to hop off because I have to get on a train at 3:00. So
thank you so much.
thank you so much, everyone.